Most of the people get confused. They think staying healthy is more expensive, when really it's being unhealthy that's more expensive. You're eating more, you're drinking more. All of these things come at a cost. Living longer is useless if you're lying in bed half the time.
There are people who don't look after their health the way they should, emotionally, mentally, and financially.
Every year, India sends almost 7% people back to poverty because of added healthcare cost. The older they get, the more they spend on their healthcare.
Jitendra Chouksey is the founder and the CEO of FITTR, a global fitness community that helps people get fit and healthy by making fitness simple and accessible. In this episode, he talks about how medicine, gene therapy, and biohacking could help us live longer and why health is the most important investment for your future.
So many people talk about investing for retirement, but nobody talks about investing in health. How can fitness be seen as a long-term investment?
We spend the first 50 years of our life at the expense of our health, trying to earn a little bit of wealth. But the remainder 50 years, we are ready to spend all of that wealth to gain 1 ounce of health, but we can't gain it back.
Do you think that our bodies have the capability? Is living past 100 going to become the new norm? JC, hi, thank you for doing this. And, I want to start off by talking about the real norm that it was when it comes to life expectancy and retirement age. Traditionally, 60, 65 is what we're accustomed to in India. But now there have been so many advancements when it comes to medicine. The fact that we're looking at gene therapy, things like biohacking, looking to expand our lifespans. Do you think that our bodies have the capability? Is living past 100 going to become the new norm?
For a few people, yes. I think, pushing it to 120, 130 is a real possibility, but that would take some time. And we have to understand that all of these therapies are going to complement the good habits. So if your habits are bad, then these therapies are not going to be useful on their own.
Yeah.
So like you said, we have regenerative, therapies. We have epigenetic reprogramming. Then we have mRNA-based medicines, right? So more targeted therapies. So they definitely improve the lifespan. And I think those things would be pretty accessible to pretty much everyone within the next decade or so.
What is the difference between life expectancy and longevity? What does longevity mean?
Well, life expectancy, typically when we talk in terms of populations, right? So they look at the average life expectancy of a certain country or a certain cohort, and they average out that, right? And when we talk about longevity, it's more of a personal metric. It does not just talk about the length, how long you're going to live. It also kind of talks about how good or how well you're going to live. Right, so longevity is kind of more holistic.
Yes.
Because living longer is useless if you're lying in bed half the time. Right. So personally, for me, longevity is more of a comprehensive, holistic term that encompasses not just living longer, but also living in a healthy manner. Right. So in the current context, if somebody says longevity, 100, 120 is where we put the ceiling, because that's how much time it takes for your brain to survive. After that, your brain cannot survive.
Okay, so our bodies and our brains can adapt to pulling our lifespans or living till 120, but not past that,
Not
is what you say.
past that with the current technology.
Okay.
Yeah, because everything that we are doing it for a lot of things, but because your neurons are, how do I say, it's a complex subject. Unless until we develop something where we'd be able to, let's say, download our memories and our data and then put it back uh, in a symbiotic form, or with the help of prosthetics, maybe we might be able to live longer or even become immortal, like you've seen in the movies. But in the current human body, like this human body, 120, 130 is kind of a hard limit.
So now that we're talking about 120 years becoming the new reality, of course, like you said, it's going to take some time. What would you say would be the cost then? Because one has to live a healthy life up until then. So what would you say on average would be the cost to sustain that kind of a lifestyle?
So I think it would be comparatively less than what people typically spend on making themselves unhealthy, because everything that makes us unhealthy comes at a cost. I mean, nobody is just indulging in exercising and drinking water and sleeping enough That's not the cost. The cost comes from your bottle of liquor. It comes from your cigarettes. It comes from your late night parties. All of these things cost a lot. So being healthy is actually pretty cheaper.
Okay.
We don't go out. I mean, if I personally talk about me, I think the only time we go out in some sort of a dining or something is when really we have an occasion, right? So anniversary or birthday or something. We don't have a habit of like going out every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We don't do that. Most of the times we just eat our regular food, and because you know how much food you're eating, our groceries are not expensive. So like this is where most of the people get confused. They think staying healthy is more expensive, when really it's being unhealthy that's more expensive. You're eating more, you're drinking more, you're smoking. All of these things come at a cost.
So being unhealthy is costing you a lot more.
Yeah.
But given that we're just talking about the average lifespan as well across the world increasing,
Yeah.
there are people who perhaps won't be healthy or don't look after their health the way they should.
Yeah.
What would it mean for them to live longer? How would it emotionally, mentally, and financially burden them?
Obviously, it's going to hurt them because they are living, and what we refer to as assisted living, where they'll be completely dependent on healthcare. And currently, if you look at the numbers, it's not looking good, because every year India sends almost 7% people back to poverty because of added healthcare cost. And most of these healthcare costs, like people, the unhealthier they get, the older they get, the more they spend on their healthcare. So that's also kind of a sad reality. I think it all boils down to, like I said before, it's education levels, it's awareness, and then individual responsibility.
What about healthcare costs? Because that is also skyrocketing, that you've spoken about, especially in old age. So do you think that it is important to invest in a healthier lifestyle? And when I say invest, I don't just mean money, I mean time, and be more proactive so that you don't get to the space where you are shelling out more on supplements and medicines and surgeries?
No, I mean, that has to happen. Like, that's what preventive healthcare is all about. But today in India, preventive healthcare practically does not exist. We have this wellness industry, which is again, supplements, gimmicks, detox, and all those random things. But as an industry, something which is regulated, something which is recognized, something which is centralized, and something which is science-backed, it does not really exist. So it will take some time for this industry to evolve. And once we have a proper preventive healthcare industry, I think most people will switch to that. And the awareness shall come. Because it's definitely coming in the Western countries, and sometimes India takes a little while to adopt.
Preventive healthcare is something that we really need to work on, according to you.
Yes.
And so many people talk about, I will plan for investing for my retirement, but nobody talks about investing in health, which is so critical at this stage. How can fitness be seen as a long-term investment?
This is something I keep telling people. We spend the first 50 years of our life at the expense of our health, trying to earn a little bit of wealth. But the remainder 50 years, we are ready to spend all of that wealth to gain 1 ounce of health, but we can't gain it back, right? So it's really a paradox, because we are ready to sacrifice our health for a little bit of wealth, and then we are ready to sacrifice all of our wealth to get a little bit of health, but it doesn't happen. People need to understand this. The health and wealth, they both go hand in hand. You cannot be happy if you're not healthy.
So what are some of the other misconceptions when it comes to aging or living longer lives that you really want to bust, or longevity?
The secret lies in your habits. Secret lies in doing basics again and again and again, rather than, like some sort of a fad, or just eating too many supplements or going for these too many therapies. These are more on the experimental side of things. Right now, we don't have definitive therapies where we can say, hey, these can definitely improve your lifespan. The idea that these therapies can improve the lifespan right now is more on the side of, people. You have snake oil salesmen. They're trying to basically peddle this to general public. So it's more towards, how do you say, they're milking from the rich and elite, because everybody wants to live longer. Let's say, okay, do this, give me the money. So that's what's really happening. We don't have definitive therapies that can improve your lifespan yet.
Because you think that it needs to stand the test of time before we actually
Yes.
decide whether or not it's a
Yes.
therapy
Yeah.
that works or
It
not.
all looks promising, but we don't have them yet. Everything there is, it's all in experimental phase, not of FDA approved and not widely available. In the next 10 years, it might be available. And but I'm saying in the next 10 years, we don't have them yet. So as of today, anybody is promising biohacking, longevity, and all of these things based not on basic habits, but on specific therapies, supplements. Those are complete gimmicks.
Where does India stand right now amongst, a lot of the other countries? We've, for example, seen in Japan or in Australia, the lifespan is increasing quite significantly. Where does it stand in India?
Right now, in a very confused condition. It's kind of, I would say it will get worse before it starts getting better. Because India is still one of the hottest markets for these kind of gimmicks and all sorts of shortcuts. So just like you have financial
And yet we're the
scams.
country where we have, the most diverse sources of food, where we have yoga, where we have wonderful medicines, and
Yeah.
And it's such a paradox that still that's where you're
Yeah.
putting us in a confused state.
Yeah, because we are trying to,
Ape the West, is it?
no, not really. We are trying to be scientific, and at the same time we are not trying to be scientific. So it doesn't really work. You are either going in the general direction of science or you're not. Because on one side you're saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to use all these technical advancements. I believe in AI. I believe in all the latest technology. But at the same time, you're like, but my ancestors did this, so I'm going to do this.
So how do we? What's the way forward according to you?
You got to believe in one thing and stick to it.
And what is it that you believe in?
I believe in science. So I'll stick to science. I'm not going to do what my ancestors did. My ancestors never lived beyond 40 years.
Mm.
Like historically, if you look at it, never had the world had an average lifespan of more than 50 years, except for the last 60, 70 odd years. The whole world, the average lifespan was roughly 40, 45, even in your earlier centuries. And then it only started going up after the 70s with the advent of your healthcare and medical interventions. That's when it started going up.
So what is science saying about increasing lifespans? What is science telling us about how we can live better lives and start planning for it when we're in our 20s, 30s, 40s?
Science has told us that there are certain things that you can do on a regular basis, like the secret lies in our habits. And science has reinforced that these habits are indeed good. Then there are certain other things that science has told us that we wouldn't be able to figure out on our own. For example, science says protein is good for you, right? Science says that you gotta drink some amount of water every single day. Science also tells us that, hey, sleeping less than 6 hours is not good for you. 7 to 8 hours is where you should be aiming for. Science also tells us that more than 10 hours can actually cause neurodegenerative decline, right? So science is giving us uh, more concrete information on habits. On top of that, science is also helping in like, for example, some of the things, let's say deficiencies. If we wouldn't be able to address those deficiencies in the past, we'd probably die of those deficiencies. Today we have mediums, we have supplements, we can address those deficiencies proactively and can prevent a lot of diseases much before they actually happen.
How would you say longevity and financial planning are connected?
I mean, if you're going to live longer in an assisted living, if you are, let's say, you thought you'd die at 70, but now you're not dying, you're like 70 and 80 and you have your medical bills, what are you going to do? I mean, you can't really go on without planning your finances, right? So it's a tricky situation. I think everybody needs to understand that all the money that they're earning at some point of time, if they're not healthy, it's not going to be enough, and they go back to poverty. And then you're old and you're sick and you're poor. Like, what possibly
It's a
could
life
be the
not worth
yeah?
living.
It's what possibly could be worse than that.
Yeah.
Like, you're old, you're poor, and you're unhealthy.
Mm.
That's like the worst imaginable thing.
Is it possible to estimate a person's longevity at the current stage or when they're in their 40s or 50s basis the kind of lifestyle that they lead or the habits that they have?
So we have lots of models. These models, for example, Levine's phenotype model, right? It takes into consideration your blood biomarkers, For example, your CRP levels, your inflammation in general, then your blood markers, platelet count, mean cell volume, all these markers. And then basis this, it predicts that what's your biological age, right? So, for example, somebody who's actually 30 might be aging like a 35-year-old, because then you'll be able to know that the organs are there. And so basically what they do is they compare this with population level data. All right. And then they compare, like, basis this population, how well or how poorly you're aging.
Yeah.
Right. So basis that you can actually estimate how long somebody's going to live. But like I said, it's a model, theoretical model. It's a good model to like read and apply and improve, but it's not a definitive model. Like in science, nothing is like really definitive. There's always a margin for 5% error. Yeah.
Okay. And, speaking of, all of these tips and tricks that people are doing, there's an extreme with someone like Brian Johnson, for example.
Yeah.
He reportedly has the heart of a 37-year-old, the skin of a 28-year-old, and the lungs of an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
He's in his late 40s. Of course, he's very extreme. Like I said, 100 plus supplements a day and, plasma exchanges. Are we moving in that direction now? Are more people moving in that direction to explore all of these things?
Well, I certainly hope not. Because, like I said, I don't believe in all of these things, and most of these things are kind of experimental and borderline gimmicks. Like I said, taking 100 pills when only 5 or 6 of those are actually grade A evidence, it doesn't make sense, right? I don't encourage people to follow these kind of unrealistic things, and I don't think that's going to improve Brian's objective of living longer. If anything, these things are going to hurt him.
In the long run.
Maybe in short term also, but we'll see.
Okay.
Because what I understand about homeostasis, it's pretty resilient and it can tolerate some bit of abuse.
Yeah.
But it's going to come back. So when you do all these kind of things, it affects you.
What about the healthcare conditions and the living conditions in India? Because on average, maybe in the 1950s, like you said, it was around 41, or in the 40s, the life expectancy. In the year 2023, it bumped up all the way to 70, and now we're looking at a higher age.
Yeah.
What does that say about India, our health conditions, our living conditions?
Look, living conditions are definitely getting better. And like I said, most of the primary reason is not because people have improved their habits. Most of the credit for this improved longevity goes to the healthcare system. We can save a dying man and we can keep saving them. We have pacemakers, we have stenting, we have open heart, we have transplants. All of these things can save a dying man, which was not possible in the past. But when we are saving a dying man, it's coming at a cost. That person is not a person who's living at his 100%, even for his age. He's living, let's say, 40, 50, 60%. And of course, we love them. But if we purely look at it from an objective point of view, those individuals are not adding, but taking a lot from the society.
I think what a lot of people don't realize is that your financial wellness, your emotional wellness, and your physical wellness are all interlinked.
Yeah.
What's the messaging that you want to give regarding that?
I mean, if you really think about it, WHO itself defines health not merely as an absence of disease, but a state of physical, mental, social, and emotional well-being. And let's just add financial well-being to it, right, to make it more comprehensive. I think people need to understand, because it's like the foundation. You cannot have a building. You can't raise a building on one pillar. You gotta have all 4 pillars if you want to build on top of it, right? So if you want to build a Burj Khalifa of your life, you got to make sure that you are growing all 4 pillars. If you just ignore one of them or 2 of them, then you might not be able to build on top of. You'll just stick to first floor.
So what's your parting message for those who are looking to be not just financially secure, but to be healthy and financially secure in the next 30, 40 years? What are the top 5 habits that we need to start adopting today?
Sure. Number 1, understand that you are never too busy to invest in your lifestyle or health. The reason why you're busy is probably because it's not on your list of priority. Also understand that the more older you get, the more difficult it will become for you to maintain good health. And once you have lost your health, it's never going to come back. It's never going to come back. And that is going to give you so much pain that you cannot even comprehend right now. You'll comprehend it, and by the time you realize it, you can't go back in time. So there's a lot of pain, a lot of trauma that's in store for you if you're not taking care of your health right now. You're going to make a lot of people unhappy, including yourself, and the pain will not just be limited to you. It's going to extend beyond you to your family.
Yeah.
Everybody is going to be traumatized by what's going to happen to you in your old age, right? So I want to just give a very strong message to everybody who's watching this podcast. Health cannot be your second priority. It has to be equal. Health is as much, or I'd say even more important than wealth.
Huh.
Without health, there's no wealth. So invest in your health when you have the time. Time runs out, it's not going to come back.
Really, thank you so much for that, Jitendra, because I think I'm definitely, along with everyone watching this podcast, or a lot of us watching, are going to have a rethink about our health, because it is ever so critical, and it's important to maintain a healthy lifestyle, not just for us, but like you said, for everyone around us.
Yeah.
So lots of key takeaways from this podcast. Yes, of course, with a lot of technology, science, we are seeing an increase in the life expectancy and lifespans of people. 120 years is probably over some time going to become the normal life expectancy. But your habits and your daily habits are very critical for a healthy lifestyle: motion, nutrition, hydration, and rest. You are spending a lot more to become unhealthy rather than spending to be healthy, because it doesn't cost much to lead a simple and a healthy lifestyle. And I think the bottom line of this podcast is, if you are not healthy, you have nothing and you cannot be happy. So do remember to prioritize your own health first. So I'd love to know, what are some of your key takeaways from this podcast? Are you going to now stop everything and go for a run and look after your health? Do tell us in the comments section below. Do remember to subscribe to Personal Finance TV. And of course, I will catch you in the next episode of Season 2 of Temperament. Thanks so much for tuning in.